Thank you for joining our Finance, Personnel and Economic Development Committee. I am joined by Council Members Lillquist and Stone. We have two items before us today. The first one is an ordinance amending the Bellingham Municipal Code to adapt mandatory changes to the city's business and occupation tax. Earlier this year, legislation passed House Bill 1403 that adopted a number of changes to the business and occupation tax, often called B&O tax. These changes are mandatory for all municipalities conducting B&O tax, and updates include clarification on how income from services is apportioned between jurisdictions, new alternatives to the standard apportionment of services, and changes the due date for annual filers to coincide with federal taxes. The city is required to adopt these changes effective January 1st, 2020, and I'm going to turn it over to Forrest Longman.
Thank you. Yes, as Councilmember Vargas said, this is an update to the B&O tax model ordinance, which all B&O taxing jurisdictions must adopt. The changes are mandatory and they must be adopted by January 1st. So the primary change of the update is related to service apportionment, which determines where and how much revenue related to services are reported in any given location. So specifically, it better defines customer location. Currently, it defines customer location as where the majority of the contacts occur, which can be a bit nebulous and hard to pin down. And this creates just a hierarchy of decisions that's much more clear and logical. So it should make the process easier for taxpayers and for us. Other changes included in the update are further clarification for apportionment calculations and how exceptions to service apportionment are determined, and changes to definitions to match the RCW, and finally changing the filing date for annual filers to April 15th. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Committee? No? Okay. We could pass this ordinance? Okay. Okay, a motion has been made to pass the ordinance amending the Bellingham Municipal Code to adopt mandatory changes to the city's business and occupation tax. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0 and will be recommended this evening.
Thank you.
Our second item tonight is the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's 2020 Lodging Tax Recommendation. So as Finance Chair, one of my roles is I also serve as the LTAC Chair. And we held our annual meeting 2 weeks ago and reviewed all the applications, just so you are aware. This year we had 20 applications for our startup grant, so those are under $5,000, and we had 18 for our standard grants. In total, we approved 15 at the $5,000 level and 16 at the standard grant level. So that's one part of it. And there's also a signature event RFP that is out there right now. We have received all those applications, and the criteria and judging is going to be done and put in by November 25th. Then we'll do an interview process to choose the top 2 or 3, and then a final decision hopefully will be made by the end of the year. So this process right now is to review and approve the proposed budget recommendations that we put forward at the October 22nd, 2019 meeting. LTAC met to review the 2020 grant applications and the 2020 tourism fund expenditures. So enclosed in the memo is our recommendations, and I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Terasandine.
Well, thank you, Pinky. Just a quick reminder, usually I come to you during the budget work sessions, and this year it was a little bit different of process and a little speedier. So tonight you're going to take action, final action on the budget. So when you do that, these recommendations will move forward. The state allows city councils to do pretty much just one thing when it comes to lodging taxes. So as a reminder, they give the authority to the LTAC, the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, to decide how the funds are spent. And then the city council can either fund them or not fund them. You can't add things to the slate and you can't change amounts. So if there's anything in this slate that you're uncomfortable with funding, that's something that we should we should know. But otherwise, these will move forward. And Pinky, I think you did a good job covering the grants. I will remind you that the institutional there, Bellingham, Whatcom County Tourism, Mount Baker Theater, and Whatcom Museum all have 5-year contracts. And so those funds are established in their contracts, or the way we establish the rates.
Councilmember Lillquist.
Yeah, to begin, so Pinky, you mentioned that we have just advertised opportunity to fund a new signature event. Sea Feast was the previous signature event. The idea is that we would give them seed money for 3 years and they're up and running and on their own. However, I notice under special projects, they are still receiving funding lower than in previous years. That wasn't part of the usual grants. Tell me what the thinking of the LTAC was on that one.
I'll let you start.
Okay, so LTAC did review that. We went through the process of looking at whether we should extend some of the funds for the Sea Feast signature event. We evaluated, everything they've done for the last couple of years, and saw where they were, and felt through their request and our revision, looking at all of their books, etc., that if we could help them for maybe one more year, that they think that they could be stabilized after that year. So our board did look at that and decided that we think this is a very important event. We feel like it's being very successful and we don't want it to stop its momentum. So therefore we decided to fund it for one more year. But you're right, that was not in the original plan. This is something that the board reviewed and discussed and decided to go forward with. Tara, is there anything you want to add on that one? Okay. Mike?
Yeah, one more item. Also under special projects is a countywide wayfinding implementation.
Mm-hmm.
And countywide wayfinding has actually been a discussion for, 6-8 years. Yeah. There was a major study that was done, again, a countywide look at wayfinding and visitor, wayfinding, getting visitors around. I presume this is part of that, and I also presume that this is not the entirety of the funding, that we're using $600,000 of this lodging tax money. Are there other jurisdictions, and how much are they putting in?
Yes, the whole program's over $2 million countywide. On the 16th of December, I'm going to be bringing an interlocal agreement to you an interlocal between us, Whatcom County, and the remaining cities in our county. We're all joining forces. Executive Laos is actually recommending to the EDI board that the EDI fund help pay for a portion of Bellingham's and all the small cities programs. So that's about $400,000, and then the port's got. So our share is a little over $1 million, and LTAC, as you remember, has been saving up money for several years for this purpose.
Thank you.
And I just want to add, that was the wayfinding presentation that we had a couple of months ago to talk about how we're unified as a county. And yes, we're very fortunate in that it's not going to cost us the whole amount because Executive Laos has been an advocate to make sure that we had funding to pay for this throughout the county. So I feel, even though that's a big number, it's actually just a little over half of the amount we would actually have to spend if we didn't have that funding. And this is a projected number. We don't know exactly. This is what we're saying we're going to spend for 2020, but we don't know exactly as the process goes forward. Committee, any other questions?
No motion is needed.
Was that?
No motion is needed.
Okay.
The budget's adopted.
This is for information only, and then, budget adopted. Does anyone else have any questions? No? Okay. Thank you so much, Tara, and that is end of committee.
Okay.